This podcast is brought to you by B2B Better. Most B2B podcasts rack up downloads, but they never move the needle on pipeline. At B2B Better, we build own media systems that sales teams actually use to close deals. We've helped companies turn their podcasts into revenue engines, shortening sales cycles, improving outbound reply rates, and directly influencing millions in pipeline. So if you're tired of content that looks good on paper, but doesn't drive business results, visit b2b-better.com to see how we do it differently. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Pipe Dream and our 1 in 100 series. I'm very excited today to be joined by Becky Willis, Group Chief Commercial Officer of the Hewitt Matthews Group and co-host of the new season of the Agency Hackers podcast. Becky, welcome to Pipe Dream.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. I love this idea of 100 podcasts in 100 days. So really happy to be part of it.
It's relentless, but a lot of fun. And I mean, we can have a lot of really great conversations around the idea of owned media and the role of kind of media production in modern day B2B marketing. I obviously reached out to you because I saw the announcement a couple of months ago that alongside Ian, you were relaunching the Agency Hackers podcast. And I had to get you on to kind of hear a little bit of the story behind that show. You know, where did it originate? What does it look like today versus what it looked like in the last season, and your kind of journey so far? So let's just get straight into it. Tell me a little bit about what the Agency Hackers podcast is and who it's for, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So Ian and I have known each other forever, and I've always been very involved in the Agency Hackers community. I remember a few years back, he and I were sat on a rooftop somewhere having a chat, saying it would be really fun to do a podcast. So Agency Hackers, for people who don't know, is a membership community type of organization, and it's for agency founders and people who work within agencies of a certain size. Well, to be fair, they've got lots of different, a range of agencies in their midst now. But, you know, to all intents and purposes, agencies could be media agencies, PR agencies, digital branding. So it's not necessarily just one tranche. Effectively, it's agencies. And so regardless of what they're doing, they're welcome. And we were talking about this, saying it would be really fun to do a podcast because, you know, he's the sensible one and I'm a little bit more wild. And but we're both like, we've got our fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the agency scene. I used to make it my business to know what was going on. And so, you know, things like who's being acquired, who's shut doors, who's doing what, like who's won a big client. I don't know if you remember the old Heat magazines or the old The Sun, you know, or the old Red Tops, and it would have the gossip column. Within the gossip column, there would always be this thing of like, oh, what's been going on, you know, with this actress or this actor. So we were like, this would be a really good idea to launch this podcast where we're just talking about what's going on in the scene. And yeah, it's so Ian launched it a while back. And I believe Sophie was his co-host, who used to work at Agency Hackers. They wrapped that up probably a year or so ago, and we have now relaunched it. But I'm there as a co-host now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've got one episode out so far. You've got another episode, the second episode coming out in a couple of weeks. So it's still early days, but you know, there's a couple of really interesting elements to the show that you've developed that I'd like to kind of pick up on and maybe we could talk through. And so a couple of those would be, you know, one, the production element of it is the most noticeable. You've obviously decided with Ian to go into what looks like a full-blown TV studio, right? And so this isn't just like we're doing here today, recording on Riverside virtually. This is a kind of like highly produced piece of creative content. And so kind of talking about your thinking there and kind of the decision made there would be an interesting angle to kind of dig into. And I think the second would be the format itself, right? So, you know, there are so many B2B marketing podcasts out there and so many marketing podcasts just broadly. 90% of them kind of follow the same format. We'll bring on a guest, we'll talk about some sort of topic, it'll run for about 45 minutes and then we'll call it a day. You've gone a different route, you know, and to kind of use your words, it's like a gossip column podcast. There's a timeliness to it. There's a newsworthiness to it. There's a kind of reacting to the industry events of the day kind of element to it. And I want to dig into that as well. So why don't we start there? What made you feel that there was a kind of space and a place for a show that's being billed as like a gossip column for agency land?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jason. With there are loads of podcasts out there that are, and they're really useful and they're really good. The marketing ones in particular, and I've got lots of marketing ones that I absolutely adore. So I didn't want to add to the noise, and I think it's a little bit more fun. Also, as well, I'm by no means a marketing expert, and but one thing I am is like I'm animated. I love finding out bits of gossip. I love news. I love the agency scene as well. So I suppose it was like we didn't want to add to the noise of just like yet another marketing podcast. Wanted to play to our strengths, and do something that we actually care about, and just hear, because I do. Most of my friends are in agency land as well, so I get to hear, and I've got friends in like big network agencies at like WPP and Accenture. I've got one man bands and kind of everything in between, CEOs, up to interns. So yeah, we wanted to kind of do it like that. And in terms of the format and why we decided to go for the studio, I mean, it's gorgeous, first of all. Like it's such a good podcast studio. It's up in Edgware. I need to remember the name of the studio because I need to give them a shout out. But they do all the production for us. So we recorded a pilot. An inside scoop here. So we recorded a pilot, and we did it at a podcast studio, where it was very sort of like between two fans, and it was it never had us both on at the same time, and it was fine. It was great. It just didn't match the vibe of what we were going for. Talking about what's going on, and like you said, it's timely. It's a bit newsy, so we wanted it to look a little bit like a news studio. And actually, even more fun is so this our next episode. We've actually got a couple of phone ins as well. So we've actually now got a format where people phone in and tell stories. And already, I don't want to spoil it. It hasn't disappointed. Like the first phone ins that we got, the first one was bonkers, and yeah, so it's great.
I mean, that phone and idea I was gonna come to because I saw you and Ian promoting it on LinkedIn the other day, and I'll dig into that in a second. But I guess I'm really excited for this podcast because of the format that you've adopted. I want to talk a little bit about your and Ian's process around like identifying the story that's going to be covered. Because we at B2B Better run a couple of, I guess, news-based podcasts, right? And when there's this constant point of friction where it's like you can't really start planning that episode until you're pretty close to the recording day, because there may be some killer piece of news that comes out the day before that suddenly is going to throw the script, and you've got to focus on that. It's not like if you're doing a interview based podcast, there's evergreen content where you can like stack half a dozen ideas, batch record them, and then know for the next 3 months you're good. So like, what is the process that you and Ian are working with to kind of formulate what the topic is of the episode? Where are you finding the stories?
So, I mean, LinkedIn is obviously our biggest, most fertile hunting ground. So we'll see stuff on LinkedIn and we'll screenshot it and send it to each other, or just like keep it in a notes thing, or keep it in an album. Also, like, to be fair, you mentioned about things being evergreen and interview based. You'll find as you watch the episodes, it's timely, and we talk about like what people are talking about at the moment. But the thing is, in agency land and with leaders in general, there's no such thing as a unique or timely problem. Like everyone's always got the same problems. It's people, it's margin, it's this, that, the other. And there might be the occasional bits and pieces where it's like, oh, this company's just laid off, this massive network agency has just laid off 40% of their staff. But that probably happens once a year. so so a lot of the stuff that we talk about is like firing, hiring, stresses of growing an agency, as well as the occasional news story. But also as well, it's funny because Ian and I have a weekly call anyway. He'll ring me up on a on a Friday morning now, and we'll start talking about stuff, and he'll go, whoa, 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 stop, 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 and I'll go, sorry, what? And he'll go, this is great podcast content. Like, don't use this all up now. Let's talk about this on the pod. Effectively, and again, it plays to our strengths. Ian is the one, he collates a lot of the stuff and builds the structure. I react to the stuff that like there and then. I deliberately don't look at anything until we get into the studio. So everything that happens on camera, where I'm like, oh my god, oh what was that? None of it is put on because I don't know what I'm gonna see. I trust Ian. He builds the framework and then throws me the bones, and I have to like off the cuff react and respond. And so I think that keeps the energy really nice as well because you've got to have if we both did it, it would be chaos. And I think if we both went in very, very structured and very, very prepared and go, today we're going to be talking about this, we're going to be talking about this political situation. I think it would be mind-numbingly boring.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think that's a great point, and the dynamic. You don't see a huge number of co-hosted podcasts, at least in the sense of like having two regular recurring kind of co-hosts every single episode. We're certainly advising the clients that we're working with where going down that road is on the table to do screen tests like between different people because finding that vibe check, I guess, between complementary personalities is so incredibly important. Now, you and Ian obviously have the benefit of having known each other for a really long time, and there is like a natural chemistry. But I'm sure we've all watched content and listened to shows where that doesn't exist. I want to bring us to the kind of phone-in kind of segment of episode 2, and hopefully beyond. A great idea. Because I'm guessing this is a way for you to turn this content from being simply a monologue, right? Like from the two of you, like broadcasting it out to an audience, to actually bringing that audience into the studio, involving the community in the kind of creation process. What kind of drove that decision? Is this just kind of a case of like experimentation? We want to try something out, or is it something else? How did you come to the idea of like a hotline segment for the Agency Hackers podcast?
Sure. So again, some of the places that we get our content from aren't just LinkedIn and aren't just like public forums. It's in the WhatsApp chats. So we're in a number of WhatsApp chats. So there's the Ibiza alumni, there's the hackers leaders one, and people use it a bit like group therapy. So people will, this morning actually somebody posted, and they were talking about a client woe that they were going in. And a particular client was they know they were going to negotiate hard to try and bring the price down or something, but to fulfill more work. And then everyone chips in and it's like, oh, have you tried this? And oh, well, this happened to me. And so that community already exists. People will come with their problems or come with a bit of good news or come with an interesting story and everyone chips in. So we use that as well sometimes as fodder. And we were like, actually, it would be even better if we had a few people because we always share those anecdotes with people's permission as well. So, we don't just go we don't just grass everyone up all the time. But we were like, actually it'd be really fun and really interesting. But we're also like, we don't want just your standard, oh, we want a new client or I hired somebody and they weren't very good. It's like, no, we want like mental stories. We want things that are really like gobsmacking or really profound, wise words. Yeah, the chat's already full of them. So, and we've got some big personalities in that community as well. Some really big personalities. So we thought, why not? I mean, they're our target audience as well, right? They're the people that we're reaching out to. So why not get them involved? Because it's going to mean that it instills that sense of, I suppose, listener loyalty and community above and beyond just us telling everyone what they think they should think.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the response to episode 1 and the show at large so far. And I appreciate it's early days, but kind of any early indicative signals that you have around how it's being received by your audience. And then I want to talk a little bit about, as we round out the interview, any kind of learnings that you've taken at this early stage that may impact how you decide to approach the podcast kind of moving forwards. And maybe we can start with the latter. Obviously, the podcast already established, having done a season 1, slightly different approach this time in that new co-host in yourself. The production environment's changed. You're 1 episode in, or 2 episodes in if you count the pilot. What kind of lessons and learnings have you taken so far around how you're creating this content, how you're approaching this content, and how you're promoting this content that is going to influence, what the podcast looks like by episode 10? Any kind of early takeaways?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, the reception has been fantastic, and I've, my phone kind of went a bit off the hook. People have, but people normally say, "Oh, like, oh, the guy who runs the studio, he said a bit of a secret is that nobody really listens beyond the clips. The people like the snippets. That very few people will sit and listen to the whole episode. But I've been pleasantly shocked that the amount of people who have messaged me or called me and said, "Oh my goodness," and they refer to something that happens towards the end of the episode. So I know that they've listened all the way through. In terms of what we've taken away from it, I think that I think the phone-ins will be here to stay. They seem to be popular at the moment. Yeah, the big one that we learned from the pilot was definitely having a structure helps, and it allows us to not waffle, but it needs to have that spontaneity to keep it fun and exciting, to have people want to continue listening. But also from our side, it was the production of it. That was a real key learn for us, because we thought we could, between us, we thought we could do it and go, yeah, it'll be fine. And, we can edit it ourselves, and we can like chop it out and make snippets for social. But one of the other reasons that we picked the studio is not only does it look amazing, but they do the full service for us. So and I think that's the other thing, is that it can absolutely kill momentum, but also, because then you are faffing and tinkering when you're not a video editor, and going through and going, oh, okay, well, oh yeah, I know this, and we were going back and forth, and we were a bit like, oh, the pace feels off, or oh, I don't quite like this, and oh, how do we cut this bit out? So it never saw the light of day, and it wasn't because we looked at it and we went, oh, I don't like the look of that. It was more just like we were just faffing about. So actually, that's been a really big learn for us, and that's what we're going to be continuing to do moving forward. Is just like making sure that we've got a service that offers an end to end. It doesn't just film and forget. And then in terms of how we're going to continue to get it out there and grow it, LinkedIn is great, and then posting in the WhatsApp channels that we farm from also helps. But yeah, everyone seems to be really on board with it, and it's great. I'm blown away by how well received it is, and how brilliant everyone's been about it.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of key takeaways there for me, and what you said there is like, finding the balance between structure and spontaneity. And, we work with a lot of hosts of podcasts here at B2B Better, and you see a full spectrum, right? You get some people who go into episodes super prepared, right? Like to almost having scripted exactly what it is that they want to say. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you get people who are like, what are we talking about again? And then like they just get into a recording environment and they just kind of wing it. And I don't think one approach or the other is better. It depends on the individual. But what I can say with certainty is that, going into a recording, going in to create any kind of content without a plan is going to end up with just kind of vanilla waffle ultimately. And so like threading that needle between how do we go in with a bit of structure, but that enables us to have that spontaneity, maybe freedom within a framework is a way to think about it, is kind of like key takeaway number one. I think the second thing that you said to me that really resonated is like the production environment. And there is something to be said about the energy that is given to you by being in an environment that is built for purpose. If you are recording an episode of a podcast and you are at home, you're using a dodgy webcam, maybe you're listening on your AirPods, whatever, going into something that feels like a TV studio is going to feel incredibly different. And that kind of energy is very visible, in how, it makes you feel. And the third thing that really resonated with me is around this kind of like focusing on where your strengths are, and this idea around how if you can build a system around the production that enables you to do the thing that you're there to do, which is come in, have a great conversation, perform right for your audience without having that then to worry about, okay, but then how are we actually going to like stitch all of this together and like get it out there into the world? That must be incredibly kind of like liberating. So those are the three takeaways that really shine out from me. um, this has been an awesome conversation. Still early days with the season 2, but from what I've seen so far and what you've told me, it's really resonating with the audience. We are going to drop the link to the Agency Hackers podcast in the show notes of this episode, for anyone who wants to go out there and check it out, and I highly recommend you do. Becky, is there anywhere that people can find you online if they want to follow along with the Agency Hackers podcast journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you just look up Agency Hackers on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, so we're on there. Follow me on LinkedIn as well. So I always drop the new episode on my LinkedIn. So, and Ian does as well. So I say that those are probably the best sources to get it. But yeah, you can. I've got it set on my Spotify.
Fantastic. Well, this episode of Pipe Dream is going to be going out this week. We have an Agency Hackers episode 2 going out next week. So let's tune in for that. But Becky, thank you so much for joining us today on the show, and we will catch you later down the line.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been great.